a monster's fire phobia, a photographer's obsession with women's heads, and being so ugly you need a mannequin in your house. It's pretty effed up. What's up guys, Single Player Nacho here with another edition of Effed Up History. The Evil Within version. To start on a sad note, you ever wonder why there's a bunch of mannequins throughout the game, specifically where the disfigured haunted enemies tend to hang out? It's theorized that the haunted are actually aware of their disfigurements, which explains why they have a fascination with mannequins. Never mind the fact that the haunted were once normal looking people who fell victim to an inhumane experiment. This means that the haunted have some recollection of their past and remember what they once looked like. I know that mannequins are somewhat of a horror trope and they're all over the place, but they're also automatically scary. But the fact that these dudes, the haunted, are actually bummed about the way they look, it's pretty effed up. And propping up mannequins in order to deal with this depression because of the way they look, it's even more effed up. Now in The Evil Within 2, the haunted were ditched out for a new breed of zombie-like creatures known as the Lost, who also have an effed up backstory. For instance, let's say an average person gets infected. A few symptoms will begin to show, but what really makes a regular person fully transition into a full-on Lost is entirely in their heads, because victims will begin to see an invisible force that they believe wants to kill them. If the victim succumbs to this force, the transformation begins, they start losing limbs, and have an endless thirst for blood. So yeah, it's almost like having sleep paralysis, only you're not actually sleeping, and if you get too scared, you're a monster forever. Now, like the universe, there's a reason for everything, and I'm sure the average American asks themselves, why is Reborn Lara so afraid of fire? Sorry guys, I didn't know how to transition to this next segment. Reborn Lara, the hideous monstrosity we encounter in the game, was once known as Lara Victoriano. When Lara was just 17 years old, her and her younger brother Ruben, who later turned out to become Ruvik, were inadvertently burned alive while playing in their family's barn house. You see, the farm's past owners got a little jealous, so they thought they'd burn it all down. Lara died due to her horrific injuries, but managed to save her brother Ruben. Ruben wanted his sister back and saw the possibility through STEM, and was successful. And Reborn Lara was, well, reborn. Except this Lara was filled with justified rage and turned out to become a multi-limbed monstrosity, who even after death is still terrified by fire. Even though Ruben was saved by his now deceased sister, he still suffered significant burn damage and was almost horribly disfigured at this point. He was also hated by his parents. I know the experience. Mom, before the accident, Ruben was seen as an exceptionally gifted child with a great intellect, but his great mind also ventured to dark places. He eventually killed his own parents, who were wealthy individuals, and used their funds for his experiments. Ruben, now going by the pseudonym Ruvik, began giving money to the Beacon Mental Hospital. And how did that fucked up facility pay it back? By giving Ruvik mental patients in return. Ruvik tortured as he experimented on these patients, with some of them eventually dying. Now The Evil Within 2 switches up Ruvik, who is a deranged scientist, with Stefano, a deranged photographer. You meet Stefano somewhat early in the game, with some of his work being on display. Of course, Stefano's work consists of mementos of people dying, and him being the one who kills them. Before the events of The Evil Within 2, Stefano became obsessed with photographing horrifying events. I mean, the guy took pictures during war where, you know, people die. One fateful day, Stefano took a picture at the exact second of a soldier dying during an explosion. Stefano was pretty close to the explosion as well, so it costed him his right eye. That's sort of why he combs his hair over to his now empty socket. Stefano became obsessed with taking pictures at the exact moment of someone's death. How obsessed? He thought it was the only one true beauty in the entire world. Yeah, I guess we all orgasm to different things. Now I'd venture to say that many fell victim to Stefano's death pictures, but one victim, whose name was Emily Lewis, is probably the most effed up. Emily was just starting out as a model, and who better than Stefano to start snapping some photos? As you probably already guessed, Stefano brutally murdered Emily, removing her head and displaying her corpse in a public park. As it turns out, Stefano did this with various women, removing their heads and taking a picture at the time of their deaths. The terrible realization kicks in when one of the game's monsters, known as the Guardian, is a giant triple-headed beast. Now, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure out where exactly all those heads came from. You know, the missing heads from Stefano's victims. Now, it's speculated that the main head on the Guardian belonged to Emily Lewis. Now, as an animal lover, this next one really messed me up. I'm saying animal lover as if I've ever contributed to anything that PETA does. So there's this big, horrifying wolf known as the Sentinel, but like many of the other creatures in this series, the transformation is quite tragic. As it turns out, it was once a regular wolf who was then inexplicably fed human meat. The Sentinel became so accustomed to human meat, it would eat up to 6 corpses a day. You can't even feed these things a tiny bar of chocolate or they'll pass out. The Sentinel story is a little more grotesque than simply being fed human jerky. This poor wolf was owned by a group of lunatics who kept it caged up and experimented on it. They would only feed it human remains, and eventually it transformed into whatever this is. Well, that about does it for this edition of F'd Up History. Thanks for watching. Go ahead. You go on ahead now. Go get some dick. Be sure to comment down below any other game series that you'd like to see on F'd Up History. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, stay single.